Our panniers have a double thick rim at the base, keeping damage from the inevitable bumps, scrapes, and offs to the outside of the pannier. Metal Mule, engineered to be different. Proud sponsors of the bike reviews on Adventure Bike TV.
Okay, so I bought myself a Royal Enfield Himalayan. A few of you all know a little bit about this bike. Just trying to explain the details. It's a 411cc engine producing 24.5 brake horsepower and 32 newton meters of torque. 5-speed gearbox, steel frame, 21-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear, ABS, fuel injection, and that basically is about it. There's not much else to talk about other than the £4,000 price tag. And I think that's probably why I bought the bike. You know, at £4,000 when they announced the bike, I thought it's never going to come out at that price. It's going to go up, it's going to be 4.5, 4.7, 4.8. You know, when you've got CRF 250Ls for 4.6 now, V-Strom 250s for 4.6, BMW G310 GSs like Graham Road last issue for 5.1, 5.2, and the CRF Rally for 5.4. You always thought this is a bike that's going to be in the mid 4s to late 4s. So when it came out and it was $399 plus 200 on the road, I thought, I'm intrigued by it. I'm going to buy one, I'm going to run it for the year, and I'm going to see how it goes. You know, as we say, it's a very basic bike. There's not much to talk about it, other than probably the bad introduction it had when it came out in India 2 years ago. Now, when it launched in India, I think it was sort of like February 2016, it's fair to say it was plagued by problems. They got problems with the wiring, with the coil, with the head bearings, with pretty much everything. They had a lot of issues with it. And back then it was called the BS3. Now, about a year after it came out, the Royal Enfield went back sort of to the drawing board and made 38 changes to it, as well as replacing the carburetor with fuel injection. This gave us the BS4 model, which is what we're getting in the UK. We also get ABS fitted to it to make it Euro 4 compliant. But essentially what we've got is the second generation Himalayan. I guess fundamentally what sold it to me was the price. Now, I think with the adventure sector, it is really starting, personally speaking, it's starting to get carried away with itself. You know, when we've got 800cc bikes coming in at 12 grand, and we've got the 1200cc bikes, the GS and the like, and the Triumph Explorer coming in at 16, 17, 18, the Multistrada Enduro at £19,000. Now, in a sense, that's gone too far. That's adventure taken to too far an extreme. So for me, for a bike to come in at 4 grand, to be basic, to offer the fundamental packages of wheels, engine and suspension, and let's be honest, it's designed for India. If it can cope with India, then it should be able to cope with UK trails. So that's what we're here today to find out. Just do a few trails around Warwickshire, Worcestershire, and see if I've wasted 4 grand or not. To go through a few of the basics really. So starting with the brakes, I mean we've got a single disc up front, 300mm disc with twin pop caliper, single disc at the rear, 240mm disc. So quite basic brakes really. It's got ABS, non-switchable ABS, which is a bit of a shame, but I guess it's pretty standard issue now not to have switchable ABS. The brakes get some criticism online and from people who've ridden it previously, but I find that they're alright, you know, they're good enough for the performance that the bike offers. They've not got a huge amount of initial bite, but if you lean on them and give them a good squeeze, they will stop you up. The back brake is a little bit sensitive, you know, you bit of pressure and a bit of brake, but a bit more pressure, a bit more brake, and then it'll suddenly grab a little bit, which is probably why it's good to have ABS. So the brakes are functional. Handling, you know, on the road, the handling is pretty neutral, pretty well balanced really. It doesn't turn in sharp with the 21-inch front wheel. It just rides quite stable really. Good leverage from the bars. Good weight distribution. The Pirelli MT60 tyres give enough grip. You know, obviously they're a compromised tyre, a hybrid tyre, but they're pretty good for the road. Performance and engine, you know, we've got a single, like I say, we've got a 410cc single cylinder engine putting out 24.5 brake horsepower, which is not a lot, but then it does put out 32 newton meters of torque, which is 10 more than the Honda CRF 250. And I think you notice that it's just got a little bit more squirt, a little bit more grunt out of the corners, and I think so for just pottling along, you know, A and B roads doing 65, it's going to be that little bit sweeter. which is pretty much why I've gone for this over a Honda. One thing I would say, the seat is a little bit soft. Now what is nice, it's an 800mm seat height, which is the same as a V-Strom and about 75mm less than a CRF and 40mm less than a GS310. So it's a low seat, which is good. It's got quite a soft foam, so if you weigh probably a little bit, and if you've got quite long legs and you're above 6 foot, you might find it a little bit cramped in the leg. You might look to put in a bit firmer foam in the seat, but other than that, pretty good all round. So yeah, happy days. Way through the riding day, we've done a few trails on the bike, on the Himalayan. I guess first impressions are that it's better than I thought. I mean, first of all, it's better in the way it seems to be constructed and put together. The overall product is better than I was expecting. It doesn't feel cheap like a Chinese made bike might, and even the low-end Japanese bikes have now got that tinny shininess that this doesn't seem to have. It seems a very handmade, almost labour-intensive product, so it seems like you get a lot for your money first and foremost. How that translates into the way it rides, well, first and foremost the weight. It's about 190 wet at curb weight, which is quite heavy, and that's always going to blunt its trail and off-road ability. I think if we were to view this bike solely as a trail bike, it'd probably fall down a little bit compared to a CRF 250L, which is 40 kilos lighter. As it is, what you've got is quite a nice package. The standing up position is quite nice. There is a little bit of flaring in the calves, and I think if you've got big calves, it might be a little bit too much flare. But when you stood up, you've got a lot of space in the chest, you've got a nice position with the arms, it's well balanced, the weight is nice and slender, and it's low down. So the bike isn't light, but it's nicely packaged weight. We've got a 15 litre fuel tank. I think that's going to be plenty. Looking at a fuel range of about 70 miles per gallon is what people have been getting already on them. So you're going to have a 200 mile range, which I think that's pretty good. I also like these frames on here. Now obviously these are adding to the weight of 190 kilos wet. These are clearly adding to it because they're really sturdy, but what it does mean is you can nicely position some soft luggage on there, a dry bag or so. It comes with a rack as standard on the back. That's going to take a dry bag really nicely. Now Royal Enfield are offering their own metal aluminium panniers, and they're £500 available from the dealers. But I think with a basic bike of the aluminium panniers, you've got everything you need there for a travel bike. Also things I like, it comes with a centre stand as standard. They're not tubeless tyres, tubeless rims, so there's a chance you're going to have to repair a puncture. Now having a centre stand as standard is a really nice thing to have, especially if you're on a trip and you don't have access to a garage and a stand anywhere. The fact that that comes inclusive of a 4-grand bike is a lesson the other manufacturers really should learn when they're charging $300 for it. Other things, I think the instrument panel's quite nice. It's got a very clear speedo reading, rev counter. It's also got a compass, which is a bit of a naff gimmick, but it adds a little bit of a distinctive feature to it. But it's got a gear indicator, temperature gauge, pretty much everything you need. And that pretty much is it. Other than that though, as a chugging day-to-day trail bike, which if you had panniers on and luggage was able to do these trails not at a fast pace but at a steady pace to get you through, whether it's in the Himalayas or Morocco or South America, it will do this all day, and it's far more competent than I think you would think. What I also like about it, it's a long stroke engine, which means it's got lots of low down mid-range torque. So in second gear it's just chugging along really nicely. You don't have to be up and down through the gears. It'll hold second for quite a long time. and it's very easy to ride on part throttle. Second gear, it'll do it all day long. So I think first impressions on the trails are, it's not a trail bike, but it'll do the trails quite nicely. Okay, to summarise, I guess it's always going to be tricky when you've actually spent your own money on a bike to look at it objectively, because you're always going to try and justify the purchase you've made. Taking that into account, now my initial thoughts on the Himalayan that I bought, I've done 100 miles on it so far, a mixture of road and tarmac, road and trail even, is that it's much better than I expected. It rides better on the road, it's very composed, the suspension deals well with bumps, and at the minute running it in, it'll sit at 55 miles an hour, which isn't obviously a high speed, but once running, I gather they'll do about 75, 80 top speed. Now obviously some people are going to look at or hear those figures and laugh and say that's not a bike for me, which I think is where the Himalayan ultimately is going to divide people who see a point in it or a merit to it, and to those who don't. And if you don't see a point in it, then nobody's ever going to convince you otherwise. Now, I like the idea of it because it is something I can use day to day, especially I'm doing guided tours this year, Land's End to John O'Groats, all back roads. For roads like that, I think it is going to be a good bike. And riding it in the first 100 miles, I'm impressed with how it performs on those bumpy, nadgery A, B roads, and it'll easily keep up with traffic. It's got a lot of low down torque and low down pull, which is quite nice. It's not a bike that you're going to want to thrash. So far on the road, more than happy with it. Decent. On the trails, I think it's much better and more competent than I was expecting it to be. It's not as we said before, it's not a trail bike. I think anybody looking at this and saying, is it an alternative to a CRF or is it an alternative to a second-hand DRZ 400? It's not an alternative to either of those bikes. I'd say this is more an alternative to a G310 GS like Graham rode last issue. And having ridden that bike recently, I would say a bike like that and the Versys 300, they've got more power, they're packing more heat to them as bikes. Are they as good travel bikes? And I guess that's the ultimate question that I'm hoping to find out this year. I'm going to do a lot of miles on it, travelling on it. So we'll see. I think the question for me is it reliable? Now, if this proves reliable, if this bike doesn't let me down or only lets me down in little niggly ways, then I think for £4,000, how can you possibly say it doesn't offer a good value and a good reference point or place that the adventure sector's heading to? So, would I have one in my garage? I've already got one in my garage. Do I regret buying it? No, I don't regret buying it. Ask me in 12 months and we'll see what the final answer is. So, many more miles ahead.
The rubber feet on the Max pannier allow better placement on uneven surfaces and protects from damaging floors. Metal Mule, engineered to be different. Proud sponsors of the bike reviews on Adventure Bike TV.